It is 4:30 a.m. on a muggy morning at Keesler Air Force Base, Biloxi, Mississippi. C-130 number 972 is being prepared for takeoff. The assignment? Fly into the eye of Hurricane Henri.
Yeah, we looked at that satellite picture too. It looks like quite a bit of activity right there around those coordinates, first coordinates you're going to send us.
Inside the command post, most of the crew is already glued to the phone, getting instructions from the outfit's storm tracking partner, the National Hurricane Center in Miami. This communications center uses the National Weather Service satellite, surface and ship weather reports, and other data to keep watch over the tropical waters between Africa and the Americas, every summer the birthplace of hundreds of terrible storms. To get a truly accurate picture of these deadly monsters, however, the Hurricane Center employs these men of the 920th in Biloxi to fly into the heart of the storm, fix its exact location and wind strength, and radio that information back to Miami. Hurricane Henri is a feisty troublemaker, gusting over 85 miles per hour and heading straight for the Mexican coast. Suddenly, the game plan changes.
They want you, instead of getting a 15Z on Henri, to get a 15Z on these new coordinates. They would like you to get down to Henri after they release you out of that invest area off Brownsville. Okay.
According to satellite photographs, the embryonic pressure system is developing off the Texas coastline, and the Hurricane Center instructs the storm trackers to take a closer look. The flight is rerouted to investigate both trouble spots, and 2 hours later, the crew is prepared to board the hurricane plane, with the exception of one somewhat reluctant civilian who takes a last long look at this big, awkward-looking craft, says a silent prayer, and climbs aboard. The squatty C-130 is an incredible aircraft. With tough turbopropped engines and specially reinforced wings, it can withstand turbulence that would rip a 727 to shreds. The crew sits on the flight deck, surrounded by a maze of technology. Twin altimeters measure altitude and surface air pressure. A computerized radar system determines wind velocity, a humidity sensor measures moisture in the clouds, and 4 separate navigation systems are employed to determine the hurricane's exact coordinates. Ironically enough, the less sophisticated air conditioning system still can't remove the eerie mist of humidity that seeps through the ventilation system and shrouds the flight crew. And the noise in the plane makes normal conversation impossible without the plane's intercom system.
MacDale Teal 42 requests a phone patch with Miami Monitor.
Skirting around the swirling air mass of Hurricane Henri, the big C-130 heads towards its first target, the low-pressure system over the Texas coast. Once the plane enters the storm area, the weather officer is responsible for quarter-hourly reports by radio of coded information drawn from the scores of gauges and meters around him. To Miami, it's vital information. To the uninitiated, it sounds like a bingo game.
14454.
To this expectant storm tracker, the storm feels like nothing more than a rain squall. Periodic thunderstorms rattle the plane, but the surrounding clouds look harmless, sometimes even attractive. I decide to abandon my seat in the main cargo compartment and venture up to the flight deck. Our next stop, the weak side of Hurricane Henri, as Captain Gambrell explains.
Each storm is different. It's just like no two human beings are the same. Some have weak sides, some have no weak sides at all. It just depends on the storm, and we operate after analyzing it using the radar and the winds. We usually try to pick a weak side, and we penetrate on that weak side. That way it's safer for everybody concerned.
In a storm where the winds often reach over 100 miles per hour, one wonders if there is a weak side.
I sure would want to be down there in a boat.
Suddenly, the joyride is over. With a calm, confident clasp of the throttle, the captain heads the big ship down, down, down to 1,500 feet over the gray, storm-tossed ocean. Huge waves and great sheets of whitecaps boil and foam across the water. The weather officer, nose pressed against the observation window, watches the water to catch wind direction and begins making many of his intricate surface measurements. A hurricane is basically an enormous, deadly whirlwind with a calm center, or eye. The winds closest to the eye of the storm rage the fastest. Henri is gusting over 85 miles per hour, and the wall cloud next to the eye rises like a huge celestial cylinder 20,000 feet into the air. In all of this turbulence, the tactical sergeant stands ready like a bombardier. A dropsonde, or tiny radio transmitter, is parachuted from the big plane. It records atmospheric conditions within the hurricane at low altitudes and radios them back to the weather officer. Finally, the plane breaks into the eye of the storm, and after a seemingly endless wind-buffeted, rain-pummeled flight, it is calm. The sky is blue and the water smooth.
Water's beautiful. Sure is.
The weather officer determines the exact coordinates of the storm's eye and radios them back to the National Hurricane Center. A C-130 can make several passes through the treacherous wall clouds in order to doggedly follow a storm's path across the ocean, and thereby help the meteorologists in Miami keep their fingers right on the pulse of a storm. Why would anyone want to do this for a living? Well, apparently the storm tractors feel safe in their big, sturdy-winged Goonie bird.
The aircraft will be shook and jarred, but it's different when you're a part of the air mass as compared to if we were to land on the ground and sit it out attached to the ground, because then it will be more inclined to tear the aircraft apart.
You're saying it's safer to be in a plane in a hurricane than to be in a house?
I think it's, I would rather be here.
After 10 hours of storm-tossed flight, it's time for 927 to head for home. They tell me that as hurricanes go, old Henri wasn't too tough, and even showed signs of weakening, thank goodness. The veteran crew was unimpressed. But the novice civilian was pleased when the plane plunked us back onto terra firma.
It seems that every time I try a new experience, there is some tradition associated with it.
The first time I crossed the equator, they poured water on my head. The first time I rode in a balloon, they poured champagne on my head. The first time I caught a marlin, they threw me in the water. But there is apparently no tradition associated with the first time you fly in a hurricane. So I would like to propose a new tradition. It goes something like this. We'll be back in a minute with our PM Magazine departments.